if you're reacting to life as it happens, and for example, if you see a donut, um, and you want to take the donut, uh, you've got to be aware and present to even understand that the donut is there. Oftentimes we pass by opportunities and things that are unfolding almost in our favor because we are clouded by our self-judgment. We are clouded by, what's going on in the world. We're doom scrolling. We're thinking about all the wrong things.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, and today I'm bringing you a Take the Doughnut interview with Cyan Banister, who's a co-founder, general partner, and investor at Long Journey. Welcome, Cyan.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so glad to be able to talk with you. And, we have more serious questions to come, but I have to start with the obligatory silly question, of course. What's your favorite donut?
Oh, my favorite donut. Okay, well, it's changed over the years. It used to be Dunkin' Donuts a long time ago when I was a kid had this coconut cream
Ooh.
donut with toasted coconut on the outside. But the last few times I've gone to Dunkin' Donuts, it seems like they've discontinued it and their donuts are kind of dry now. So I really like cream donuts and I'm really fond of Krispy Kremes. It's just vanilla cream.
Mm.
And then you can't go wrong with a good old fashioned, just plain cake donut.
Okay, so you've got options
You
depending on
got
the mood. You could
options.
go a few different ways with it. I love it.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, whatever
What's
donut
yours?
shop. Ooh, okay. I've got two that are basically the same. Now I live near this place called Moon Donut in Redondo Beach, California, and they have this donut that's like it's like a yeast donut that's piled with chocolate cream, and then it's got chocolate cream filled into the hole in the center, and then it's got a little Hershey kiss on top. So that's the one that I would go to now. But actually, it's very similar to when I was younger. I have like a childhood memory with Dunkin' Donuts where I used to get the chocolate cream filled. So it's
Yeah.
basically the same donut, but it's sort of like separate times.
Oh,
Um,
great.
that's so fun. Nobody's asked me that, so I am delighted to have
Oh,
been
they
able
should
to
they should
share this.
ask you. They should ask you.
Oh my goodness, that was wild. I said just a little bit about you up front, but tell us more about yourself. What should we know about you?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a very curious person. I like to start my day every day asking questions. I run a lot of experiments. And I never considered myself a scientist, but a scientist friend of mine recently said that I might be one. I consider myself an artist, and I'm obsessed with companies and businesses and corporations and capitalism, which those things usually don't coincide. So I think it's a little unusual.
What a wonderful mix to consider yourself an artist as well and have somebody say, no, but you're a scientist. It's like, oh, this beautiful blend of things that
Yeah.
make up you at the end of the day. So for those who are wondering, let me reset this because this is a Take the Donut interview. If you're wondering what Take the Donut is all about, that's an expression for me. It's the same thing as Carpe Diem. And it comes from this weird thing that happened to me in college where I left an actual donut on a table. It became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave an opportunity behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut. So this conversation is all about going after the things we want in life, goals, dreams, whatever, opportunities, whatever it is, and what that actually looks like, practically speaking, day to day when we do it. So for you, how are you with going after goals? What's that process like for you?
Oh gosh. Well, there's two things. One, I really like life to happen to me. And a lot of people are deeply uncomfortable with that. I used to be as well. But I found that when I want a goal or something to happen in my life, it starts with visualization. It starts with stating what it is that I want. very clearly and projecting it in my mind, visualizing it. And then I put some action or willpower into it. You know, the whole discussion about free will can come into play here or not. Um, and then interestingly, and I know this is going to sound kind of woo, but my life kind of unfolds towards it. And and without fail, pretty much, this has come true over and over and over again. When I was younger, I set goals differently and I marched towards them, and then I succeeded at some of them and not others. But I found that being more relaxed about it, being more intentional about it, leads to profound outcomes and sometimes even wilder and better than I even imagined in my mind. And so I know that's kind of a long way of stating it, but and then the other thing is reacting to what's in front of you. So if you're reacting to life as it happens, and for example, if you see a donut, and you want to take the donut, uh, you've got to be aware and present to even understand that the donut is there. Oftentimes we pass by opportunities and things that are unfolding almost in our favor because we are clouded by our self-judgment. We are clouded by, what's going on in the world. We're doom scrolling. We're thinking about all the wrong things. And so I think a bit of self-awareness and a bit of presence really allows you to see whether the donut is there at all. And so I try, though I am not perfect at this, none of us are, to wake up every day and try to take stock of what needs to happen that day, like what is absolutely necessary. And then, kind of what my goals are and how incrementally I can work towards them. I think the other thing is a lot of people think that things happen in giant leaps, but they actually happen in thousands and thousands of little baby steps. And so, you know, and reward yourself at the end of the day for making those baby steps forward. So that's the other thing is I take stock at the end of the day. Uh, how far did I make it towards my goals? What were the incremental steps that went there? What were the things that I noticed? What sort of donuts did I pick up along the way? And and that's pretty much how I do it.
Beautifully said. So many excellent nuggets of wisdom there for, different people might resonate with different parts of what you said, but there's something in there, I think, for everybody. When you have something really big in your mind that you're going after, and again, ideally you set the intention and it's moving towards you or you're moving towards it. What keeps you motivated if it's really big and it's something that's going to take a while?
Optimism and hope, and then keeping that mental image of the outcome in my mind. There's uh I'm forgetting what the name of the guy is, Espinoza, I forget his name. Anyway, he calls them mind movies, and I think that is a great way to describe it. But let me give you an example. So I used to think that when I went to an event, I had to network with everybody and I had to have an outcome and I had to walk away with that thinking that I'd spent my time in the most valuable way possible. And during the pandemic, I started asking myself a lot of questions about all of the assumptions I held true about everything. Was that really the most valuable use of my time? Had I really run every experiment possible? I had not. And so I decided to start running experiments and I went to a low stakes event, but I was working on a big goal. And the big goal was how do I think about and invest in and get involved with Hollywood to where I can reshape sort of how film finance is done? Is there something that could be done where people like Francis Ford Coppola don't have to sell their winery and leverage all their assets in order to finance their magnum opus? And I started thinking about how it was such a tragedy that he had to do that. And if he was doing that, that meant that independent artists out there were not being able to get finance to make their films. And so I had this big goal. And the end goal was I would make a difference somehow. And so after that, you could lay out the steps and you could say, well, I need to meet all these people. I need to read all these books. I need to watch all these movies. I need to do all these things. And I said, well, what if that's not true? What if I just need to dream about it and then let it come to me. And so I was like, I'm going to see if that works. And it did. And I'll explain how. So I believe, I suspect, I shouldn't say believe, I suspect that the world, or what I like to call the universe, gives us opportunities all the time and you have to seize them. And if you don't recognize them, they just pass you by. So I got an invitation to a event down in Santa Barbara. It was after the fires in Hawaii, and they were doing a fundraiser for firefighters. And I got this feeling, and that's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize is there's different senses that we have. And when people say I think with my gut, what does that mean? But it turns out that I think our gut is far more important. These senses that we have where we know something's about to go wrong, or we're a little scared and we're not quite sure why, or we wake up in the morning and we feel sad and we don't know why because there's nothing to be sad about. These things are actually guideposts for us. And I got this feeling, this knowing that I needed to go to this event, and I wasn't even sure why. So I said, well, this is a great opportunity for me to run an experiment and to put myself into a place where I don't know why I'm going. I don't know what's going to come of it. But instead of going and making a list of all the people I want to meet and all the things I'm going to get out of it, I'm going to go and sit in one place and be present and see what happens, what comes to me if I'm just present. So I did it. I went there. I set the intention, which I think is the important part. I went there. I found a nice, comfortable seat, and I started watching the band, and I started observing what was going on around me. And what was really interesting is there was hundreds of people forming little sort of neuron groups around each other, following each other around, networking, doing the thing you're supposed to do in an event. And then there was me watching the band. And it took about maybe 30 minutes, and suddenly somebody came wandering over to me. And it was this wonderful woman. And she said, wow, you're watching the band. And I said, yeah, John Fogerty's playing and he's pretty great. Nobody else seems to be watching him. And she said, well, yeah, I kind of want to sit here. Can I sit here with you? And I was like, yeah, come enjoy the band with me. So we were sitting and enjoying the band, and she asked me what I did for a living. I told her and asked her what she did for a living. And she told me that she used to be in film finance and she used to produce films back in, I believe, Germany. But she had moved to the United States because her husband was in film finance and producing films. And she's like, oh, you should meet him. So she goes and grabs him and brings him over. And he asked me about my life and what I do. And whenever you have someone, let's say you're working on a goal or a big problem, if you've got someone in front of you who has any domain expertise, you should look at it kind of like this podcast where we're talking to each other and having a dialogue. It's an opportunity to learn something. Like we're all in this great school called life. So you may as well be curious about it, right? So I said, hey, I read this article about Francis Ford Coppola having to finance his latest film, and I'm a little disturbed by it. And I've been thinking about these things and how I want to get involved. And I've been trying to figure out where to get involved. And what are your thoughts on this? And he was like, And he kind of gave me his thoughts, and that was about it. And he asked for my phone number. And he said, I'd love to contact you and talk to you more about some of these alternate ways to do film finance because, I've never heard anybody talk this way. And I just think it's kind of interesting. And 3 months went by. I didn't hear from him. I just let it go. And I wasn't sure why I went to this firefighter thing still. But 3 months later, I get a phone call from him. And he says, I didn't want to tell you really that day, but I'm best friends with Francis Ford Coppola, and I co-directed or was his assistant director on several of his films. Now, explain how that works. I can't. But I can tell you it took zero effort. All I had to do was visualize a future that I wanted, be incredibly present, be curious, have I had some expectation, but very little expectation. And then the story just unfolded from there. The next thing I know, I'm flying down to LA. I'm meeting with France's attorney. I didn't end up figuring out how to do film finance because that story is still unfolding. It's still happening. I'm still in that goal right now. And I don't know how it's going to end. And that's really what's beautiful about it is I have no idea because we're not fortune tellers. Sometimes when we want something so badly, we get so attached to the end result that we don't realize when something more magical is happening that's even better. And so I think that's what I'm in the middle of right now. I think something magical is happening that's even better than what I could have imagined. And I didn't get to help Francis, but I'm helping other filmmakers and I'm figuring out slowly where I fit into the ecosystem. And I settled in on an area and I'm exploring it right now. But I wanted to share that because I think I would love to see people relax more because life becomes a lot more interesting. You know, there's this hustle grind that we all talk about where you have to hustle and you have to work hard and I certainly went through that and that was a big part of my life for a while. But now I'm finding that if I just sit back and I start practicing this form of mindfulness, amazing things happen. Just absolutely amazing things. And so speaking of seize the day, you know, that's the most important part is to wake up every day, wake up right, go to sleep right. And that means wake up in the morning, set your intentions, complete those intentions, have time for yourself and free time for yourself, and then reflect at the end of the day. And I think if you could just do those three things every day, you'll find that your goals will come naturally to you. They'll complete naturally.
What an incredible story and example that what you're talking about can work.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. When when you are moving towards something, especially given what you just said, how you're kind of in progress with this goal that you've been moving towards, a lot of times obstacles come in our way when we think we're moving towards something in particular. And I'm curious for you if there's a particular brand of challenge that just comes up over and over for you, no matter what it is you have going on in your world. Like this is going to be the Achilles heel that you always have to be mindful of.
Well, what you resist persists, right? So anything that you're afraid of or you have any sort of pause about is a growth edge. It usually means you need to face it, not run away from it. So I have my fears just like all of us. You know, I used to have a fear of speaking, for example. I don't think I would have been able to do this podcast with you um, probably a little over 10 years ago. I certainly couldn't get on stage. I didn't like to be at dinner parties or parties in general. I'm very introverted. But these are things that you can carry around as a story and they can become reality, or you can fight them and get through to the other side. So I face obstacles every day, but I look at them as lessons. And, I one of the things I'm working on right now is I was just on a podcast called All In, and I was terrified before I went on because I'm not good at confrontation. I'm not good at interjecting myself. I'm not good at cutting people off, but it's what was required of me on the podcast. And the fans of that podcast are asking for me to come back. And I hope I get to because now I'm like, wow, I really want to overcome that obstacle. I'm excited about it. And I may fumble, I may fail, I may come off as a fool, but who really cares? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, and especially if I state that out loud, if I say it in front of the audience and just sort of say, hey, I got this feedback that I don't interject enough. So I'm going to try and see if it's better. If I speak my mind more, if I'm natural more, if I, have a little less fear. And so I mean, that's the obstacle I'm working on today. If you ask me in a couple weeks from now, it's going to be different because every single day we're faced with new challenges and new lessons. I have this weird suspicion that we're on Earth and we're here in the first place to learn. And every day when you get a challenge or you face suffering or any kind of event that happens in your life, no matter how bad it is, it's an opportunity to reflect on it and to see the light in it. And so every single challenge and obstacle for me is just an opportunity to come out a better person on the other side if I can.
I have to say, before you even said what you just said, I was thinking, and when you answered the first couple questions, that you are very compelling when you speak. I'm very drawn in when you speak, and what a gift, not only to you but to everybody that you did push through whatever reservations you had about it some years ago, because there's so much there. Um, and I think
Thank
even
you.
that is a lesson for everybody. I was going to say it after we were done recording, but then I was just like, no, this, this is something I'm actively thinking as you're talking. So what a
Well, thank you so
wonderful.
much. I really appreciate that because a little bit about my background. I was selectively mute until I was 5 years old. Speaking is a immense fear that I have because words are powerful. When we communicate with each other, we are communicating thoughts and ideas and pictures, and people respond with emotions and their perceptions of those thoughts, and they project back at them. And so it doesn't come without a cost every time we speak. And that was never lost on me. And so I was afraid, so afraid to speak. But I'm becoming less afraid, and I hope that it helps. I hope it helps others. I hope that people see this, and if they're afraid to speak, or have an obstacle in their life, that they look at it like a challenge, like a fun video game, which is what are the steps I need to take to get to the other side of this so that I can be better at this, and what doors does that open for me now that I can? Now that I can do public speaking and I can get on a podcast and I can talk to people and I can drop in like this, it's opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me that I just never even knew about. And it comes with great responsibility. Like I really, really wouldn't do this unless I felt that there was someone listening to you that might get something from it, that might be like, wow, this could improve my life. I hear
There's no
something here.
question in my mind that there's somebody who's going to hear this
Yeah, if I
who
can
will
touch
have value.
one
Yeah.
person, then every time I do one of these, it's worth it.
Yeah. This is so beautiful. Well, I'm curious how you would go about answering this one. So, when you think back on your life to this point, personally, professionally, whatever comes up, what would you say is the biggest donut you've ever taken? Biggest opportunity, biggest thing you've gone after?
Hmm. I think it's learning about technology. So before I learned about technology, I thought that I wasn't capable. I thought that I was going to work various jobs that would just get me by. I would have a roof over my head. I'd have my needs met, but I didn't really have a for anything. I didn't really love anything. But the first time that I saw a mobile computer in my life in the wild, I remember seeing my very first laptop. It was like 1993. And I had this conviction, I had this knowing that I had to do whatever it took. I had to grab that donut and I had to go all the way with it because if I didn't, I would regret it forever. And I think sometimes we get faced with that feeling and then we walk away and then we do regret it forever. So I think the biggest leap that I ever made, the biggest investment in myself was, and it was, I had to not go to parties. I had to not hang out with people or have certain friendships because I was busy reading. I was busy being hands-on, learning about computers and learning how to code and learning how to do all the things that I needed to do in order to be a part of this world. And what I discovered was I am capable of it. I can do this. I could do it. And not only that, but there was a welcoming community that was there to help you. Like we're we're all not alone. And I think that when people say they're self-made, and I used to say that. I used to say I was self-made and self-taught, but that's not true at all. We are a product of all of the millions of interactions that we have from birth. And I had an amazing network of people around me that really enhanced that experience. But by far, that is probably the biggest donut. It's the first one that pops into mind, so I think it's probably correct. It's just I just didn't think the donut was for me. And so I think if you see people and you're like, oh, that's a boys' room, or those people are highly educated. I don't have a degree, or I don't have the certification for that, or I don't belong in that room. That's all very self-limiting thinking. And if you think that, that becomes your reality. But if you think, gosh, I could get in that room, I can do this, and you start visualizing, going back to the goal setting, you start visualizing yourself in that position. Before too long, you'll find yourself in that position, doing this
Hmm.
very thing that you thought was impossible. So I think that was I'm glad you asked that question because that's definitely probably the biggest donut of all.
It could be a hard question for people to answer, especially if you've done a lot of things. You have to pick something, and what do you pick? So I'm so glad
Yeah.
that this came to you. You might have already answered this, but is there a donut that you're taking right now? What's in progress for you that's top of mind that you can talk about?
Um, hmm. Hmm. Gosh, I have lots of little donut holes. I love donut holes, by the way.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't talk enough about the donut hole. Um, but they can be bite-sized joy, right? Lots of bite-sized joy. I think this film finance thing is probably a really big donut. It's really outside of my wheelhouse. It's outside of my world. When I was a young girl, my mother's an artist and she was an art teacher, and she told me that I couldn't be an artist. She said, you know, there's no money to be made in art. You can't be an artist. You've got to go pursue either medical science or become a lawyer or use your mind in different ways, but art is just not for you. And so I adopted that and wore it like an outfit and told myself I'm not an artist. And so right now, the biggest donut for me is, am I an artist? Can I be an artist? And do I have to be an artist? Might my role be to fund art instead? Might my role be to be a part of art rather than the creator of art? These are all questions I haven't answered yet, but I do know that there's a donut there and I want to take it. And I don't want to leave it behind. And I don't want to have these self-limiting thoughts. And I do want to seize the day because I think that that's something I want to do. And I don't want to just define myself as a venture capitalist, and what I'm good at. I always want to be better at things that are kind of unknown to me. Um, so I would like to be successful at it, as successful as I've been at anything else. And so right now it's going to just take a little while for me to figure out, like I said, where I slot in there. But I do think that's probably the big one right now.
I'm sure hopefully there are people who are listening to this who have thoughts that
Oh,
they can present. That would be interesting.
I would like to write a book. I'm in the middle of writing my book, and I really would like to finish it. That would be a crazy donut for sure if I could get that one done.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I would read it. If you ever need
Awesome.
somebody to be a reader on an early
Okay.
draft, you let me know.
Awesome. I
I'm in.
will.
You've been addressing this in every question so far, but there may be people who are listening to this or watching this who have a donut of their own they want to take. Maybe it's just an idea right now, or maybe they've started towards it and they're trying to figure out how to keep moving forward. So let's sprinkle some encouragement. And what would you say to those people?
Uh, Again, limit all your self-limiting self-talk. Like, eradicate it if you can. Instead, visualize that you are going to get it. It is going to happen. You are worthy of it. You are becoming it. It's already here. And when you start thinking those things, you'll be surprised at what doors open for you, what people appear in your life, what weird emails that seem like they're out of the blue, what weird phone calls, what weird serendipitous coincidences that just start to happen. So be open-minded, pay attention, try to be as present as possible so that you can recognize when your donut is arriving. Uh, but all you have to do is have hope and that desire in your heart for it to move towards you and just be positive, like overwhelmingly curious and positive about it. The moment you say, gosh, I can't do it. What was I thinking? This is out of my wheelhouse. This is too big for me. I'm not the right person. We all know what those thoughts are. Just get rid of them. They're like weeds. It's like a disease. You just want to root them out and get rid of them because they don't serve you.
Hmm. So good. Hopefully, this gets people inspired, fired up to stop limiting themselves and to
Yeah.
go for it and to put it out there and to be observant of what's happening in reaction to that. So, for those who want to follow you on your journey, who want to see what you're up to, where can they find you? What link should I put in the description?
Yeah, I mostly post on X every day. So my handle on there is scientist, Cyantist. And it's scientist because I like to study myself. I consider it one of my greatest curiosity points. And I think it should be everyone's. I think everyone should study themselves. You should know yourself, know thyself. And I have a Substack, which is called Ugly Duckling. And it starts out from birth, and I'm about 14 or 15 years old in the stories. But what I'm doing is telling stories out loud from the perspective of the memory of the child telling the story. So it's pretty raw stuff. I've had a pretty traumatic childhood, but it gets better. It's about to change in a very monumental way. And mostly what I'm trying to show people is the process of how I got to where I am today. And because I didn't like giving people these BS responses when they would ask me how I got here or how did I survive, or I would just give blanket answers, nothing answers, meaningless answers. I really wanted to understand the truth. How did I get here? How did this all happen? And the self-reflection has been really key in it. And then all of those stories are getting put into a memoir or novel. And I've been asked to write a book many, many times. And I really don't want to write a book that kind of pats my back. That doesn't feel good to me. I want to write a book instead that sprinkles in philosophy and actually awakens people, and that they can self-identify with it and say, gosh, my life was like that. I had this happen to me. This also happened. I can also do this, to basically help people take control and take that narrative back for themselves, and realize that radical accountability. So the other thing to get your donut is radical accountability. I'm going to put that in there. I ran a thought experiment recently that everything's my fault. And what's really interesting, as soon as you start telling people that, they're like, Cyan, oh gosh, no, it's not your fault. I'm like, no, no, it is. It's my fault. The reason why I'm upset right now is because you're a person that I'm working with that is inexperienced in this thing, and I'm upset that you're inexperienced. That's my fault. Of course you don't know what you don't know. You're not there yet. So me getting upset about it is within my control. That is my emotion. It's not their fault. So I've started radically being very accountable, and it's really interesting what kind of doors that has unlocked with me. And so I know I'm deviating, but that Substack, if you go there, you're going to see me meandering through some of these things and thinking out loud. And it's all the kind of things you would tell a therapist, but I'm telling the whole world.
Wow, that's exciting and bold and brave to do. I mean, everybody be sure to check out these resources. There's clearly so much wisdom to be gleaned there, and things for all of us to think about and what you're saying. And if you liked hearing Cyan's story, be sure to like and subscribe on this video. There's so many inspirational interviews still to come here on this channel. And in the meantime, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me and having this conversation and sharing all of the wonderful things that you shared. You've given us a lot to think about.
Yeah. Thank you for all that you do, and for showing up for people, and for taking there's millions of things you could spend your time on, but you're giving back to the community in this way. And I think it's really remarkable. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you for that. And okay, everybody, you know what to do. Go out there, get inspiration, and get
Yeah. Go get
donuts.
it. Go get your donut.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.